Good morning. Greetings from Ames, Patna. Let us spend some time reflecting on where are we headed. Molecular level corrections, silencing or augmenting the genetic code, to altering protein synthesis, to rectifying metabolic aberrations are round the corner. The technology boost from mobile-based video communications, connecting you to the last man in the queue, to advanced imaging and precision robotics, at present out of reach of most because of the cost factor, will soon become within reach. Thirdly, our honeymoon with numbers, not being enjoyed by us after class 10, is now to start again. The divorce between maths and medicine is to be reversed. As patients ask more and more, not what should happen, but what would happen. Policy in practice decision in medicine is becoming progressively evidence-based, especially when they involve large costs, large risks, or many people. Finally, medicine to reach everyone must not only be effective, but affordable, safe, timely, and logistically simple. To illustrate this, I quote a joke from an erstwhile rishi who in a Sanskrit shlok said, Vaidyaraj namastubhyam yamraj sahodara yamastu harat prana vaidya prana dhanascha. हे वैद्यराज, आपको प्रणाम है। आप यमराज के बड़े भाई हैं। यम तो केवल प्राण ही लेता है, पर आप प्राण और धन दोनों ले लेते हैं। We will now concentrate here on the paradigm shift concerned with numbers. For adapting to this paradigm shift is a low cost thing, and it capacity builds us for becoming good users or producers of research. This is how we learnt medicine up to now. Plausibility and logic. If asthma is produced by bronchoconstriction, bronchodilation should relieve it. But now, people ask, in how many cases did bronchodilation relieve asthma? A new surgery has been developed in Saskatchewan district of Canada. The logic is that since in stroke, middle cerebral artery is thrombosed, bypassing the obstruction by anastomosing the anterior branch of the superficial temporal artery to superior branch of the middle cerebral artery should restore circulation, decrease damage, enhance chances of and levels of recovery, and increase survival. Now my question is, how many of you would refer your next near and dear for this surgery? Kindly record your answer as yes or no against this situation. A. A follow-up News B shows circulation on affected side was 80% of the normal at 48 hours of surgery. Now against this situation B, what is your decision? Will you refer or will you not refer? In News C, we have moved from case report to case series. The discoverer, a very famous surgeon by now, presented a case series of 700 cases in a Boston conference, showing 5-year survival of operated cases to be 56%. Excellent angiographs showed excellent restoration of circulation up to 80%, 95% confidence limits, 73 to 84 of the normal side post-operatively. It was described as important as coronary bypass for coronary thrombosis in heart attacks. Kindly record your decision in this situation, situation C. A single youngster in the audience had asked, "But sir, where are your controls?" There was stunned silence at the audacity of the youngster, insulting the great man with a stupid question. The great man, red in face, had answered, "Do you mean to suggest I would have left half the patients to die?" The inexperienced youngster, instead of getting terrorized and sitting down in response to a huge laugh and hilarity from the audience on the stupidity of his question, had continued standing and asked even more stupidly, "But sir, which half?" Same question lingered on and led to a multi-million-dollar, multi-center randomized controlled trial involving 11 countries, which showed that against the 56% surviving 5 years in the operated group, 86% had survived amongst the controls. A huge and cruel shock to mankind, relying on plausibility of what should happen rather than probability of what did happen. A shift from plausibility to probability had now become essential in medicine. The decision, of course, was to stop the trial. The trial was a costly one. It cost $12 billion to complete. But by randomizing half the group to the conservative treatment, it saved $27 billion. Is the editorial of the New England Journal, which reported the trial. Thus, the decision to shift from should happen to did happen is now important. The divorce with mathematics that we doctors happily embraced on passing class 10 has to be reversed. Numbers must start speaking to us once again, and we must start counting and measuring again and again. In medicine, all the time we are trying to predict one of the following. If etiological factor is the cause, then disease is the effect. If prognostic factor is the cause, then outcome is the effect. If treatment type is the cause, then result is the effect. You would notice that only in the treatment type, the exposure to cause is in our control. Hence the study is called as experimental study. The other two are called as observational studies. In experimental studies, the ethical question of whether or not to expose becomes paramount. Not so much in observational studies. The second question is, why should we select randomly over a sufficient sample size? This is to ensure that the results obtained on the study population should apply and will be generalizable to target population, because both the study population and the target population are drawn from the same source population. The third question is, why random allocation? Because random allocation to the various groups of treatment over a sufficient sample size ensures that the groups are similar on all known or unknown factors that can explain the difference in result between the groups. And the only explanation that remains of the difference that we see is the treatment type. Hence, treatment type is the explanation, and all others are called as confounders, and they become neutralized by random allocation. What you must remember clearly is that anything else, case report, case series, anything else, except a randomized control trial or a meta-analysis supporting one treatment over the other, just belongs to the dustbin. Finally, if we have many small size randomized control trials and they are similar and well conducted, we can combine them to give us a meta-analysis so that the confidence limits are narrowed and the precision of our estimate of the difference increases. The structure of a randomized control trial consists of a source population, and from the source population, a study population is randomly selected to ensure that the results obtained on the study population can be generalized to the source population. Amongst the study population, cases are randomly allocated to the treatment groups to ensure that the treatment groups are equal on all other factors except the treatment, which remains the only possible explanation of the difference which we see when we compare outcomes in the two groups. The treatment has to be precisely defined so that it can be reproduced by the reader. The follow-up has to be adequate to allow all important outcomes to occur, and during the follow-up, outcomes should be measured at sufficient frequency and in a blinded, unbiased manner amongst the two groups. All relevant outcomes should be measured. Here you saw that angiography was measured, survival was not. Next we move to analysis, when the outcomes are compared between the two groups, and the analysis should report both the point estimate and the interval estimate, the magnitude of difference and the significance of difference. If we are dealing with the randomized control trial at the project phase rather than the paper phase, then there should be a plan of dissemination and how the author is going to convert his research into action. Based on this, I have created a series of questions which you can add, detract or modify, but you must have a checklist to be able to comprehensively question a randomized control trial at the proposal stage or at the paper stage. Finally, we will play a little bit with numbers that we got out of this randomized control trial. We said that in the operative group, 56% survived 5 years. That means 44 out of 100 died. The risk of dying in the operated group is 44 out of 100. That is 0.44. The risk of dying in the conservative group is 14 out of 100. That is 0.14. The risk ratio is therefore 0.44 divided by 0.14, and we will get the value of 3.14. And the risk difference is 0.44 minus 0.14, and this is called as risk difference or attributable risk, and we will get a value of 0.3, which means that 30% more cases will die if we operate them as compared to the conservative group. If we try to measure odds ratio, the odds in the operative group is not 44 by 100 but 44 by 56. Here the denominator of 56 does not contain the numerator of 44. And parallel to the risk, you can have an odds ratio or you can have an odds difference. Now I will show you a small program where you can plug in these numbers and get not only the point estimate of odds ratio or risk ratio, but the interval estimate. So instead of saying that the odds ratio was 4.82, if you say that the 95% confidence limits of this odds ratio was 2.42 to 9.61, this would mean that if you conduct 100 such trials, in 95 out of them, you would get the value of odds ratio from 2.42 to 9.61. Thus, your point estimate in the study population becomes the interval estimate in the target population. Since only in 5% of the such studies you would get a value which does not contain 1. You see, if the odds ratio in the operative and conservative group was same, then the no difference value or the null value would have been 1. So if this interval is not containing 1, then p-value is 0.05, which means that there is less than 5% chance that the null hypothesis is true. Next, let us understand that we can plug in the numbers in this 2 by 2 table by choosing patients with accident and without accident, that is the effect side, and going on to find out who was drunk and who was not drunk. Since this is called as the case control design, and we have to rely on the odds ratio as the measure of association. In such a design, you can study multiple causes. You can study drunk or not drunk. You can study with driving license, without driving license, above 50 years or below 50 years. So you can study multiple causes of the accident in a case control design. In studies where the outcome is not remote or rare, we can come from the exposure direction. For example, we can say that there were mothers who were drinking and there were mothers who were not drinking, and we can find out in 9 months' time how many of them had abortion or a bad outcome of pregnancy. So this type of study is called as cohort study. We can report risk ratios in such studies, and these studies can be done to estimate multiple outcomes. For example, we can study aborted, not aborted, premature baby, not premature baby, normal delivery, not normal delivery. We can study multiple outcomes in cohort studies. This is the story of a descriptive study. Here the outcome of interest is encephalitis in children, which kills about 1,000 people between UP, Bihar and Assam. We micro-mapped this epidemic using electronic medical records in AIIMS Patna, and you see the distribution of acute encephalitis of 2012. Just by seeing this micro map, you can see that the encephalitis is unable to cross the Saryu River. It affects Gorakhpur, but it doesn't affect Azamgarh. Therefore, just by seeing this map, it was confirmed that the encephalitis is traveling by fecal route in the north bank of Saryu River. It is not able to cross the midstream. Therefore, we convinced the Chief Minister, and that is what you will see in the next slide. This is an example of a descriptive study where only one event is being studied, and that is occurrence of encephalitis, and we are studying the time, place and percent distribution of that event. Convinced by the fact that the midstream doesn't allow it spread to the south of Saryu, we diverted the midstream to wash off the fecal contamination in the summer season at the Majhi Pul. And we launched a campaign in Muzaffarpur for clean drinking water. The results are obvious. From 1347 in 2014, the numbers of occurrence of the cases was decreased to 64 in 2015. So, a simple descriptive study can do such huge wonders. It can create such a lot of impact. Of course, you will have to be able to convince the politicians and the bureaucracy to be able to convert your research into action. 2x2 tables are also used for diagnostic tests. We can test a surrogate test like a bone marrow density by ultrasound against a gold standard like a DEXA. And of course, you get different types of test characteristics, not odds ratios and risk ratios, but sensitivity, specificity. And we will try to concentrate on this table in another lecture. And when tests are equal, there is no gold standard. One test can be compared with the other, and we can find out those squares where test 1 and test 2 agree on positive, agree on negative, and we can also find out accuracy, and we can also study what is called as kappa. Of course, I am not going to go into the details of this and bore you with further numbers. Finally, the most misused statistics, prevalence and incidence. If there are 10 cc's of fluid in this jar and you are adding at 2 cc's and subtracting at 1 cc, then in how many minutes will you have 50 cc? The answer is 40 minutes. And every one of you will be able to answer it. Now convert it that if you have a ward of 100 and you have 10 patients in that ward and you are adding at 2 patients a day and subtracting at 1 patient a day, in how many days will you get 50 patients? Answer is 50 minus 10. That means 40 days. So this is given in this formula that prevalence at time t is equal to prevalence at time 0 plus time into incidence rate, which is the tap which is filling, minus attrition rate, which is the tap which is subtracting. So bye bye. I hope you are not frightened, and I have been able to create some interest in numbers amongst you. Woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep and miles to go before I sleep. I'll end with a sher in the style of Lucknow. ले राह वफा की हर ठोकर, हर खार बताए देते हैं, हर दाव घात, हर ऊंच नीच, हर बल समझाए देते हैं। अब इसके आगे तू जाने, ए दोस्त तेरा दम खम जाने, हम हाथ पकड़ दो चार कदम तुझको चलवाए देते। थैंक यू।